Fantastic. Okay, well, welcome and thank you for joining us on our Self-Directed Support Community of Practice seminar. These are our 1-hour sessions and they're open to everyone. Everyone's always welcome. And these are our spaces where we discuss a current self-directed support challenge, we share some great practice. We're generally about supporting the implementation of our SDS standards, and today is particularly about our standard 1. But most importantly, it's a learning space where you can learn from each other. So today we have the great pleasure of hosting our independent support organisations. Yeah, so today we've got the pleasure of hosting our independent support organisation colleagues who are funded by Scottish Government as part of the Support in the Right Direction programme located within Inspiring Scotland. They are in every local authority area and are funded to help people and their carers understand self-directed support. They are highly skilled and focus on relationships with disabled people, unpaid carers and families, while also having an excellent knowledge of local resources and community networks. They also fully understand the challenges faced by local authorities in providing social care and support for everyone. In their latest evaluation, nearly 80% of people reported an improved understanding of self-directed support as a result of contacting their local independent support organisation, with nearly 3,000 people participating in basic SDS training and nearly 3,000 being supported to access community-based services. There's a couple of quotes from some of the people that have used their independent support organisation. So one quote said, "Without your support, I'd have just given up. I felt bullied and unheard until you stepped in." And then another quote from the support organisation in Perthshire, Support Choices, when somebody said, "I would say what Support Choices does is essential to the exhausted carers out there, and I would highly recommend their service." So our independent support organisations are allies to social work practitioners. They're allies to our DP teams, and at a time when there is a huge pressure on supported people and families, they are an essential part of the local support people need to get their rights to self-directed support, to support their independent living, and to get services and support that works for them. They are also catalysts for creating different ways of providing care and support in local communities. So today is very much about sharing their experiences of building relationships and working partnerships with their local health and social care partnerships and local authorities. So I'm going to hand over to Laura, who will take us through what we're going to be covering in the next wee while, and then it's over to our colleagues. Thanks, Laura.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Donna. Good afternoon, everyone. You're very welcome. It's lovely to see you all. So today we have the pleasure really of handing most of the session over to our colleagues who are working locally. So first of all, we're going to hear from Emma Mitchell, who is the SDS lead at Clackmannanshire and Stirling Health and Social Care Partnership, and a bit from Violet Keenan as well, who's the CEO of the Independent Living Association in Forth Valley. She's going to specifically talk about the work that she does alongside Emma in relation to self-directed support. In the room today, we also have Ashley Drennan, who's the fund manager from Support in the Right Direction in Inspiring Scotland. So someone who's got that national perspective of some of the independent support that's happening across Scotland. We will hear a bit, as I say, from Emma and Violet, but we know that we also have some other folk in the room who have lots of important experience that they might want to share as well, notably Bex Barker, who works for Community Contacts, and she might be able to come in and make a bit of a more informal addition to our discussion. But what we do also want to note is that she's also cited for jury duty and might not also be able to. So that's just a wee warning in case Bex isn't around. But we appreciate that there's other folk around the table today who might want to come in and share a bit of their experience, or might want to ask questions of others who have this working partnership up and running and have some of the insights to share. Then after that, we've got, because we have our Inspiring Scotland colleagues here today, we hoped we could use it as a bit of an opportunity to learn. So we've got some poll questions that we would love you to answer as we head towards the end of our session. As Donna and Callum have said, we're recording the session, so it will be shared on the SDS library after the fact. But I think without further ado, I'd like to hand you over. I think I'm going to Emma first. Emma Mitchell, who's the SDS lead at Clinic Manager and Stirling Health and Social Care Partnership, and she's going to get us kicked off. Thanks, Emma.
Thanks, Laura. Apologies. Violet, have you got the slides? I think we were maybe starting with Violet and then I was going to come in.
I do apologise.
No, apologies, Laura. Just wanted to check. Violet, sorry, you're on mute.
Sorry, I wasn't actually going to put up slides. It was just a little reminder of what we had a chat about. But really, Emma and I had a chat about this the other week there. The way we very much work is just being very transparent with one another. And I think that's been the key to everything that we've been doing. We've recently put a new proposal forward for the way that we deliver the support in the Forth Valley area. And I think it's good if we talk through how that came about. And the reason we did that is we weren't getting the referrals through for whatever reason, and we were looking at different ways that we could disseminate the information. And I think that the difficulty most support organisations have is that they've got all the information and the capacity to speak to people, but we don't know where they are, and the local authority know who they are, but don't have time to speak to people until they're allocated a worker. So I think that was one of the sort of biggest things that we've seen at sort of niche there. But I think it all begins with having these open conversations with the HSCPs and actually be able to align everything that we're doing to their strategic plans and the way everything's moving forward. We've recently just taken on in our core service, we've recently taken on supporting carers with their own packages for respite and a break from the caring role. So that's taken a different dimension as well. But again, it's down to the biggest thing is actually getting everyone to know that we're here and that we are, as Donna said, absolutely an ally to people. I get called a critical friend at a meeting, and I'm taking that one because it doesn't mean we always agree with what's happening, but we don't have to have an argument about it. That if there's a problem comes up, I would take it to Emma, and Emma would take it further or pass it up the line if need be. And most of the time, we've come to an amicable agreement by doing it that way. Don't know if you want to mention anything about that,
definitely.
Emma.
Apologies, Violet. We've been talking about a few things recently, so I think I've just sorry, I'm very much in Monday mode. But no, as Violet said, I think the thing that's worked best for us is ultimately we have got a really good relationship that we've worked really hard to establish over the past few years. We have SDS Forth Valley as a valued member of our team. So when we have, for example, we've got a self-directed support steering group, it's really important and fundamental for us that SDS Forth Valley attend those meetings that are involved in influencing how we shape, co-design. We have SDS Forth Valley at the table for our carers planning group as well. And I think particularly when it came to things like the Well Worthwhile Waiting project, as Violet said, it was about having conversations with us at the outset around this is what it is we are looking to propose. What do you think? Does that align? And we have open conversations. I think me and Violet probably speak most weeks, sometimes several times a week, which works really well. And that goes into everything from projects like Well Worthwhile Waiting, but also in terms of when we're looking to do things. For example, we've recently had weekly drop-ins for the staff, and then we've talked about, well, actually, if we're not getting referrals through, how do we manage? That relationship needs to translate to the staff as well. So Violet helpfully attended one of our briefings recently to talk to the staff around the work they do, the projects that they have, the training that they have available, and some of the feedback that we've had from staff, particularly on the back of the SDS putting into practice training, has been extremely positive. They found it really helpful. And again, I think it all comes back to that. It's about having that open relationship with each other, having that good communication around who they are and valuing them. I cannot emphasise that enough, that the team are invaluable to us, and knowing that they can pick up the phone at any point. To have those conversations, to ask questions. And I think there's been something in there for me about us having that kind of mutual respect for each other, that sometimes I'll say something and think, oh goodness, I should maybe have known that already. There's never any judgment. It's about actually how can we work in collaboration together to get the right solution for the person. I feel like I'm talking 10 to the dozen here to try and cover everything, because I'm conscious there's a lot of people in the room, and
You're
there's a
doing
lot
fine,
that we're
Emma.
looking
Take
to
as long as
cover.
you need.
No, thank you so much. But no, as I say, I think particularly for us, there has been that acknowledgement around this is about us working together to find solutions. And I think for me, it has been that when things, as Violet kind of mentioned earlier, if things aren't working, it's around, well, how do we pivot? What do we need to change? That kind of trial and error, and that we're a team in this together. So it's not, there's never any blame. It's all about that kind of self-improvement and how can we self-evaluate and then take that evaluation and then change in whatever way we need to. So yeah, it's one of the relationships that I would say we value the most, and it's so important, and I cannot thank SDS Forth Valley for everything they do for our partnership.
I think it's also the fact that you do feel heard, and that there isn't any need. Sometimes we come to sort of different interpretations of the legislation, but it's about sitting down and having a look at that, or it's maybe something that we've never come across before. I think for any fledgling SDS organisations that's out there, you will never, ever, ever know everything. And every single day is a learning day, because there's type of scenarios that come up you've never heard of before, and it's about working it through and understanding the legislation. And the local authorities or the HSCPs have been great at allowing us to be available for the staff and being trusting to leave me alone with the staff, if that makes sense, to actually go through the legislation and talk about the interpretation of it. And that's something that we're wanting to continue to do with newly qualified social workers. We do it also in the Falkirk area as well. It's a 6-week programme we do with them. It's just an hour a week looking at 10 pages of the legislation and saying, right, what does that mean? You know, what does it look like, and tying it into our session that we've got. And again, I'll take this opportunity, Emma, thanking you for trusting us to do that. That's what it's about. It's about being completely transparent about things. Things don't always go the way we want them to, but I think it's about sitting down and actually finding a solution. We're never going to get a solution to everything. Money's always going to be the issue, but we tend to never, ever, ever speak about money. We talk about the support. And I think as long as you keep money out of the conversation, that's half the battle, because we can make things work with the support hours. We don't need to talk about funding. I would give that as a key tip. Never talk about money and you'll never fall out with anybody. But I don't know if anyone's got any questions on that, or how we've gone about it, but we do have regular training sessions. As I say, we have regular attendance at meetings. Emma's always at the end of the phone. We always get back to each other as quickly as we can. It's not always possible right away, but there's lots of solutions that we've come to through problems that frontline practitioners have brought up with us. And it's actually been great having Emma as a point of contact, because not always, if there's not a point of contact, it's very difficult to know who to speak to. But the fact they've actually appointed an SDS lead in Stirling and Clackmannanshire makes it really, really easy for us to know who to go to.
And I think, sorry, just to kind of add on to that point, for Violet, one of the things that I found really helpful is that at times there might be issues that Violet has started to see, that we then through our discussion see, well, these are actually themes. It's not isolated to a person. There's a bigger issue at play, and then we maybe need to think about, well, what does that mean in terms of, do we need to think about a policy? Do we need to think about training? Does the partnership need to think about where that's then heard, as I say, at an SDS steering group or a carers planning group? What does that mean for commissioning? So I think having that linkage together works really well, both on a kind of individual case by case basis, because what we can certainly do is find resolutions for people without things always necessarily escalating to a complaint. We can have that good transparent conversation and work together to find a solution. Or equally, as I say, if there are things that we're starting to see, well, do you know what, you've found that at your end, I'm actually finding something similar here, or go away and do a bit of fact finding, is this actually a bigger issue? And sometimes it is, and then we've then had to work together to see, right, okay, well, maybe do we need to maybe look at bespoke training for a particular team, or do we need to think about actually meeting with one of the locality managers to talk about this in more detail? So I think that has been one of the I think real strengths of that kind of collaborative working, that works well both ways. There are times that, as I say, the focus might be on things that I need to raise from the partnership's point of view, or equally Violet can come to me with things that are specific more to SDS Forth Valley, but it is that mutual exchange and looking to each other's strengths as to, as I say, how can we together come to solutions. So sorry, just wanted to add that before we go to questions. Thanks.
There's just one little phrase that we've got up in our office, and it says it's amazing what you can achieve when you don't care who gets the credit. And I think that's what our partnership's all about. It's not about who's winning, who's right, who's wrong. It's just about getting it done and getting a solution. And I'd leave it there.
That's great. Sorry, I thought I was off my. Thought I'd come off my mic there. That's brilliant. Thank you to both of you. I'm being really cheeky, and I'm going to ask a question, and then hopefully then come to Bex. Sorry, Bex. It was just while it's in my mind. Emma. So we've heard about the fantastic relationship between both of you, which is clearly important and a big driver for it. My question is to Emma about, like, to what extent do you need leadership buy-in around having that organisational relationship? Because I guess that's, yeah, and maybe if there's anything more like about that, about how you move from personal contact working relationships to organisational relationships, yeah, and how you generate some of that if that's what's required. Thanks, Emma.
No, definitely. Thank you. And I would say that that relationship was already well established at a leadership level when I came into post. Wendy Forrest, who's our head of strategic planning, was very clear about SDS Forth Valley and that relationship being so important. So when we were designing the SDS steering group, we were very clear that SDS Forth Valley needed a seat at that table. I'm now asked to write a monthly report for our senior leadership team, and as part of that I always cite the work that SDS Forth Valley are doing, again to give that oversight, and so there is that loop. Certainly we've had Joanna MacDonald as our interim chief officer for the last year, and we had David Williams prior to that, both of whom were very supportive of SDS Forth Valley as an organisation. And I think you're right, I think that leadership is key in terms of seeing the value, and also then when it comes to ideas such as the Well Worthwhile Waiting project, being supportive of that's an excellent opportunity for us. For example, we've got the roadshow event coming up next year. Again, we reference the fact that SDS Forth Valley are a key organisation that we would want to be with us on that day. Again, all of these decisions are signed off by senior leadership who recognise that value. And again, I think it would be fair to say from an operational leadership standpoint, our locality managers, so for example, Terry O'Gorman has been very receptive when there have been conversations I've had to kind of maybe escalate. Terry has had meetings with myself and Violet to talk things through, or if I've been unavailable, has met with Violet directly, which again, I think it is that you do need that, because as much as we've got a great relationship, ultimately there are things that I can only take so far. So I think having that senior leadership buy-in is integral. And we've been very fortunate here that we've always had that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you, Emma. I might come to Bex at this opportunity, seeing we still have Bex for the moment, to share any of the experience that she would like to from the two local authorities that she works alongside. And I know she has some key themes she'd like to get across to. Thanks, Bex.
Thanks, Laura. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you all here today. So Community Contacts is the Support in the Right Direction funded organisation for Argyll and Bute and Highland. I'm going to speak from the heart as I explain what it is that I know. I'm going to hopefully be positive and supportive, but really we have an experience of two halves. Our work in Highland is incredibly well received, and the work that we do with statutory sector colleagues at all levels of NHS Highland are really, really good. We've got high levels of trust. There's a lot of going backwards and forwards in the way that Emma and Violet were just explaining there, that helps lead towards really good outcomes for the people that we collectively support. So we're welcomed at the table around strategic discussions, as Emma described in CLACS. We're involved in shaping strategy, and in fact we were one of the key partners that helped pull together the SDS strategy for Highland right back at the beginning of the pandemic, and that's led to an awful lot of work that's happened as a result of that. We carried out some extensive consultation, which was really around having conversations with people, and in doing so built that high level of trust that has seen us working very, very effectively, particularly with NHS Highland, with adult social care in Highland. Argyll and Bute's a little bit of a mixed picture. So we have some pockets of good relationships, good rapport, things working really, really well, particularly in the Helensburgh and Lomond area. But it's a bit piecemeal in other areas where referral rates from statutory sector colleagues are incredibly low or almost non-existent, and therefore people rely on word of mouth, goodwill, connection with third sector organisations to find out about us. So that's just a wee point of where things are in the relationship and in the trust that's been built with the two different local authority areas that we work in. I think a key point that I would like to raise as well as that is that I'd like to do a little bit of dispelling of myths, and that is that independent support organisations are here to help people with option one. We absolutely are, and those projects that are funded to help people with their direct payments through Support in the Right Direction absolutely want to help people at that particular point in the process. However, late referral doesn't reflect in the figures that we have of when people really value our support. So I don't know if it's okay. Is it okay for me to share a slide, Laura? Is that okay?
Of course, please do.
Yep. Okay, so I wanted to show you, now these are based on our Highland figures, and the reason why I've got our Highland figures is because we're in the process of putting a presentation together for some work that we're doing there. Hang on a second, I'm just going to find the right one.
That's okay, you take your time.
There we go. So some of the indicators that we're asked to report against by Inspiring Scotland also ask us to report back on how well prepared people feel for assessments and reviews, and also that it gives indication of how people have valued that support and what particular activities they valued our support in. So what you can see in this slide, and as I say, this is based on Highland figures and not Argyll and Bute figures, is that when we receive professional referrals, 86.3% of those referrals come for option one support. So that's once the person has been through the assessment process, they've answered all the questions, they've had people come and visit them at home, they've had those good conversations with professionals to help them think about SDS for themselves or for a loved one. And at the end of that person's either chosen or been allocated option one. Just as a point of note, we have a high percentage of people in Argyll and Bute and Highland who are in receipt of option one because there are no other options available. And what we know, particularly for Highland, for adults alone, there are now in excess of 900 people in receipt of a direct payment. Pre-pandemic, it was less than 200. So you can see the potential pressure on certain parts of the system to support those people. What we see when we look at self-referrals, the blue pie chart there, is that 38.1% of people in that category actually get in touch with us because they want to talk about SDS, they want support to make decisions, they want to know what their rights are, what their options are, how they can prepare for meetings, what it is that they want to say and what they can expect. And what we know from that group of people who self-refer is that that's something that they really, really value. And my big dream is that through our collective work alongside statutory sector colleagues, that we increase the number of people who are referred early on in the process, because then they can really benefit from the full range of support that we're able to offer them. Just as a wee, I'll stop sharing that now, just as a wee, before I just finish up, just as a wee case study that I wanted to share with you. We've recently been working with a family who have waited 2 years for an SDS assessment. And in that time, they haven't spoken to anyone in the social work department. It's a child. They've had child's plan meetings. They've got really good relationships with the school, but social work haven't been there. Partly because of resource limitations, but other factors in play as well. But what we've been able to do is we've been able to start to make those tendering connections with social work, is help that family really think about what SDS might mean for them, what other things are in place for them in their wider circle of support, what other avenues of connection they can make for each other and for their child. And one of the things that we did with them was we helped them create what we call a shadow plan. So we helped them think about what life looks like for them, what makes things strong for them, what matters to them and what matters for them. And we help them document that. And where there were gaps in that, that was where we helped them think about SDS and how a budget might be able to help them. They used that plan to take to the child's plan meeting when social work could be present, and that has helped shape those discussions moving forward. At the same time as that, we help the family access adult carer support plans. So that, together with the shadow plan that we help put together, help that family feel really prepared for those conversations with social work, who were very late at the table because of those resource limitations that they have within the teams. So that was just a wee story that helped that family, as I say, feel prepared in moving forward. I'm going to stop talking now because clearly we've got limited time and people might want to come in with questions. So thank you, Laura.
That's brilliant. That's fantastic, Bex. Thank you for sharing your perspective and that insight, actually, that comparison between the different routes to which people make it their way to your organisation. When you were just telling that story there, that example from your practice, it was making me think about now I'm not going to get this right, so I'm going to need either Emma or Violet to come to my rescue. The worthwhile waiting, well, W's. Come on, Violet, save me.
Well,
worthwhile
waiting.
I wondered whether you wanted to say something about that, because it sounds like with the type of work that Bex was doing there.
To be honest, it's really just what Bex is talking about, is that people making a self-referral. So part of our project is going out and about in the community just for the general dissemination of SDS information, and people can come along to the worthwhile waiting while they're waiting on assessment or just to find out about it. And we called it worthwhile waiting because we split it into what would make you well. So it's all about self-care and everything. What would make it worthwhile is finding the information and knowledge. And we also have an outcomes and support planning workshop on the back of that, which does really just what Bex has said, get people ready. We call it a diary of daily activities. We get somebody to put in about all the support that they need. And then we start looking in the community to see if there's any support that would fill those gaps. And then, as Bex said as well, it's basically the same project but by a different name. But we'd say, right, okay, what's kind of left there, so that when they know when they're going to have that conversation with the frontline practitioner, they've already got an idea in their head what they're actually looking for. But we are very careful not to give any expectation that they would even get support. And it's about putting in that whole self-management thing as well, getting people to go out and be a bit more proactive and looking for things themselves. But with the worthwhile waiting, we are hopefully going to make that available to any other local organisation. There's no point in reinventing the wheel. We've got the proposal that went down really well with Stirling and Clackmannanshire. So we've got the proposal written, we've got handouts written, and we're quite happy to share them with other organisations. It's just worthwhile waiting. It's quite difficult to say, but yeah.
I knew I was going to get it wrong. I just wanted to, I guess, acknowledge that, our practice is changing and our partnerships are changing in relation to the circumstances that we're all working in. And I guess that real recognition of there's a systemic issue there that Bex really articulated well, which is sort of connected to a bit of a resource which causes a problem at one bit in the journey. So how do we work together? And actually that's the sort of I guess your organisation's and partnerships response to how to do that. So there's loads of hands up. So I'm going to stop sort of chatting myself and invite people in, but thank you for sharing those reflections. They're incredibly valuable. I'm just aware, as we always are in our seminar spaces, our SDS COP seminar spaces, that we are coming from lots of different places, especially when we join the seminars. So we might have folks who work for a local authority, people who are in a health and social care partnership. You might already have brilliant relationships with your local organisation and want to share some of that. Or equally, you might be working in an independent support organisation or a different organisation, or you might have lived experience yourself and want to know more about these local partnerships and the benefits that it might have. So I guess I'm just inviting everybody here to think about and reflect on their own sort of experience or gaps in experience around these types of relationships, and let's just use the rest of the time to have a discussion, ask questions and share a little bit more about how to hopefully replicate and strengthen these partnerships across the country. So Kirsty, I believe, has her hand up first, but I'm just wondering, Bex, did you want to come back in and respond to Violet?
Yeah, it's just a wee part. I was actually
Sorry,
just
popping
it in the chat there, and I'm just going against what Violet just said about not talking about money, and that's just to say for community contacts, we rely entirely on our CERD funding in Argyll and Bute. In Highland, we rely on CERD funding alongside a small grant from Carers Act implementation funding. So there are some different levels of agreement that we have, certainly with the work in both local authority areas. For us, it's voluntary. There's, apart from what's in the legislation and in the standards, we don't have any service level agreements with our partners, but that doesn't make any difference in how we want to work. The commitment to wanting to work together, the commitment for that collaboration to make the best use of our collective resources is there, irrespective of that funding agreement, and is absolutely on offer to all points of both local authority areas, to extend that reach and to bring in that earlier work from community contacts when that's welcomed by people who are exploring SDS for themselves or for a loved one.
That's great, thanks. So yeah, thank you, Bex, and thanks to everyone who's shared their experience so far. Let's get on with having a good discussion. So Kirsty, thank you so much for waiting.
I'm just making sure I'm off mute and my hand's not raised. Right, good, sorted. It's not so much a question as more of probably a couple more points for discussion. Going back to what Bex said about people not necessarily realising that independent support organisations don't just work with people that are option 1 and doing option 1 support there. So LCIL do have a payroll service, so there's a lot of misconception within some of our local authorities, not in others, because we work with East, West, Mid and Edinburgh. And West and East, we get referrals for all sorts of things pre-assessment, but not so much in Mid and Edinburgh. And what we're finding is that people then need a reassessment, because they'll come to us and they're saying, I've been given option 1 and I hear that, you'll be able to do all my payroll and you can do all these things. And we're like, absolutely not. That isn't what we do. Yes, we can help you, but you're still the employer. We can support you in all sort of manner of ways, and they have an independent living officer and all sorts of things. But actually, option 1, the budget that they were given and the option that they've been given is not what they thought it was. And they thought that they could come to the independent support organisation and they would essentially take over as the employer, which isn't the thing. So then we suggest that they ask for a reassessment, and then they're back on the waiting list for such a long time again, which is quite tricky. I don't know how we get the word out there about that we do pre-assessment support. We try. We have it on all our posters and all of these things, but I think because our payroll service is the big thing within the independent living organisations, people just automatically assume that that's what it is. Having said that, in West Lothian they do have an SDS worker in Sinead within the council, and she sort of bridges that gap, but I don't know that they have that in all the health and social care partnerships, and they maybe should.
Yeah, thank you, Kirsty. You make an excellent argument for, getting to know, like, build these relationships like the ones we've described, because there are lots of different offers across different organisations. In some areas, it's a tapestry of support that's provided across a few different organisations. So you just need to work all that out, don't you, and get to know who else is sitting around you. We've got some good stuff going on in the chat, but I don't want to hamper discussion, so I'm going to come to Anne next.
Thank you, Laura, and this will undoubtedly be one of those meetings that I'll be really glad that I came to, because a massive penny has just dropped that we can actually bring together what is the interminable social work waiting list at the same time as introducing independent support organisations to provide reassurance, assurance, a bit of pre-information. A bit like Emma and Violet and Bex have indicated, in South Lanarkshire, we work really closely with our Information and Advice Centre, and they do sessions for people who would be pre-assessment, if you like. But we don't provide people with names. We don't provide them with names. So we haven't yet linked that up. And I'm just wondering, for Bex, Violet and Emma, are there any information sharing agreements that you had to consider to get that kind of flow of information from one to the other? And could I at some stage pick your brains on it?
Yeah, there certainly was. We had to think of the GDPR implications of sharing information, but we actually get the agreement through the intake team. The intake team, so someone phoning the social work department initially, the intake team would get the GDPR consent to pass their details on to us, and they would go on to the Well Worthwhile Waiting project at that point. Once they come to us, we also get a GDPR form completed with a statement on it, just to say that we're going to hold records of the conversations we have, and we get them to sign one at that stage. But it's actually done through the phone call to get permission to pass on it's usually just a name and an email address or a phone number, and that comes through to ourselves and we pick it up from there. We don't need to know anything about the person or anything, just that, and then we'll get the GDPR form completed once they come over or once they attend one of our sessions.
Brilliant.
That's super, Violet. Thank you. Brilliant question. And does anyone else wants to come in?
Can I just come in on that one, Laura, very quickly? Yeah. So for us, we there's two ways that we make sure that we've got the permissions that are required. Clearly, there's an obligation on the local authority that if they're putting somebody in touch with us, that they've made sure they've got the consent to do so, and that's recorded using the protocols that you have. But equally, we do the same. So as part of, usually when somebody gets in touch with us and we have that initial conversation, we do just try and frame it as a conversation. But within that, we have some key points that we need to ensure that we've got across. And when appropriate, that will include an information sharing verbal information sharing agreement, and with that we then back that up in writing as part of an overall support plan with somebody that then outlines the interventions and the approaches that we've agreed with the person alongside the information sharing that they may have granted. Now, there are times when people say, no, I'm not giving you that permission, and usually that's because somebody feels that they don't have that level of trust or understanding in the local authority. There's something that's happened or that they've heard. So one of the things that we'll try and do is try and help that person tease out what it is that's making them feel anxious about that, and try and build that trust very gently to hopefully help them realise the best of that collaborative working when that's possible.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Bex. Thanks. I hope that's given you a bit of what you need for now, Anne. Thumbs up from Anne. Fantastic. Okay, we're going to come to Joanne next for a question. Joanne Reiki, I should say. We've got two Joanne's waiting. What's the chances?
No, thanks, Laura. It's a question for Bex. I'm doing a review and improvement plan on SDS for Inverclyde HSCP, and I'm interested in the comparison that you made there between Argyll and Bute and Highland, to see if there's any learning that we can take from that into our improvement plan. It sounds like, you know, there are obviously differences in the relationships there. Is there something that you could particularly put your finger on that we could perhaps take from that to maximise the potential in our relationships locally, aside from the fact that you have that additional funding with Highland, which I appreciate potentially plays a part in their buy-in with you?
Yeah, I'd say first of all, Joanne, that additional funding that we've had from Highland is a very recent thing. So what I would say that the key ingredients that have helped us with the good relationships in Highland is right from the outset, we built a very strong, good working relationship with senior leaders. And that's because their doors were open and they were welcoming. So that kind of led the way, really, and created the links with local teams as well, because they put us in touch with them. So right from the outset, there's been an open door policy and a willingness to talk about stuff. You know, relationships are so firm that pretty much we can talk about anything. So that's good. And as I say, yeah, that leadership then led to local teams that then led to frontline workers. So that's been an absolutely essential thing that's happened there. They've taken us seriously. They know that we've got good knowledge and understanding. They know that we understand our limitations as well. They treat us as equal partners. So knowing that means that we can be really frank and honest as well. So when things are really good, we say so. When there's a problem, we'll say that as well, because we know it's not going to impact on the relationship. In Argyll and Bute, it's not all difficult, it's just not as good as it is in Highland. And I'd say those open doors, they may have been open, but then the follow-up on discussions doesn't happen. There isn't that follow through, there isn't that invitation to be involved at that strategic level as it is in Highland. We've got pockets of really good work where our local workers have built good relationships either with individual social work colleagues or with a particular team leader that really helps. There's also, I suppose, on a destructive side, sometimes some of the myths that might go around aren't so helpful. So some of those myths around we might overpromise, that we don't understand the challenges that local authorities are facing, particularly around the need to balance budgets. So therefore, you know, if we're not trustworthy because we might overpromise, then why would you choose to work with us? The truth of the matter is that we absolutely understand those constraints, and like Anne was saying a minute ago, we really want to help. We want to help alleviate some of those pressures that that our statutory sector colleagues are experiencing for the good of the people that we're collectively supporting. So yeah, I think that buy-in, in a nutshell, that buy-in from senior leaders is absolutely essential, and then that commitment to learning about each other, to working towards good, trusting relationships where you can challenge each other as well as support each other when needed, is what's essential. Opening doors and not closing them.
Thanks, Beck. It's actually helpful.
Great question, Joanne. Don't know whether there's any other folk who are sitting in independent support organisations.
Can I just
well,
add one other?
I would like to come in if that's all right.
Just quickly, just one other thing, just really quickly, and then I'll stop talking. One of the things that we do know from those really good relationships is that because we're underutilised in Argyll and Bute, that underutilised staff time goes to Highland. So, for example, in one of our localities in Argyll and Bute, we received 4 referrals in the period between October and March this year, compared with an overall 408 in Highland. So, you know, it just goes to show that natural kind of drag happens, but what it means is that those people in that particular locality aren't enjoying or aren't exercising their right to accessing independent support. So that kind of whole local authority commitment is really, really important as well. Sorry, Joanne.
Hey, Joanne McGee, in you come.
Are you sure you're ready to relinquish the
Absolutely.
I just a roll, Bex. I don't want to touch it. Aye. So I've actually kind of lost my train of thought because I was so busy listening. But aye. So obviously I'm Joanne. I'm at GSA. We cover 4 local authority areas as well, which is Glasgow, North and South Lanarkshire, Take Control, and Eastern Barton. And we do very similar work to what Violet and the rest of the support organisations do, and we do it very, very well. We have, and I see Kelly's put in the chat, we do what is SDS. We do induction programmes for individual social workers. In Glasgow, we have workshops for social workers all around the SDS and building those relationships. But getting back to what Anne was saying earlier as well, I've always advocated that we get involved at an earlier stage for the pre-assessment. We all do it, but we don't always get invited in at that stage. And the data from some of our local authority areas are showing that one uptake, our referrals from social work, the option 1 has already been chosen. So are people getting true choice and control, or has that decision already been made? To be part of the pre-assessment work, to explore the 4 options, because that's what's part of our surge funding, is around pre-assessment. So they go into the community, share the information, they also talk somebody through the 4 options. They also support people who are not eligible to get an SDS option 1, 2, 3 or 4 to look at what else is out there. There's a lot of work the support organisations do, which maybe we don't always get enough credit for. But there's many kind of facets to that. So there's the pre-assessment stuff, and then there's also the stuff around getting people ready, which Bex was saying in her slides around people referring individually. I think there's a whole bit of work we could do together around being involved in that earlier stage. With the way that, you know, it's in the chat as well about trying to recruit social workers. We know everybody across the board is feeling it. It's not you again, us against them or anything like that. But for me, it's about how can we help each other? How can we support each other? And we're all here for the same causes, to help the supported person get through their journey. So why not invite us in at that earlier stage, where the person who's applied for a social care, an assessment, may have, I don't know, 8, 12 weeks, 10, it could be longer than that. We're in there in that interim period, supporting the person and getting them ready for their assessment. So I think there is a place for us in that earlier journey. Thanks, Laura.
Not at all, thank you, and sorry for keeping you from making your comments. So thank you for your patience. So really strong message about the importance of collaboration, doing this work together, just for, you know, for the best outcomes for people, and the, you know, some great ideas about what those opportunities might be, particularly the places where we're feeling real tension, that bit where people are waiting at the beginning. I'm going to bring in Kay, and then if there's no other questions over that after that time, we will we'll look at our poll questions. But yeah, Kate, and you come just now.
Hi, thanks. I'm in work with the Community Brokerage Network across Ayrshire, and we work alongside Ayrshire Independent Living Network. So there are 2 funded organisations in Ayrshire, and Aileen are also funded through the local authorities as well. So slightly different relationship for us. But one of the things I think we've been struggling with a little bit, particularly over the last 12 months or so, is because of the changes that are being made in some of the different local authorities in terms of the challenges that are being faced and cuts to budgets and reassessments and things. And I think, just echoing what Joanne and others have said, we've been meeting with the local authorities as a group. So Ayrshire Independent Living Network, the Carers Centre Advocacy, talking about some of the challenges that we've been experiencing and trying to come up with solutions with them, including bringing us in earlier so that we can support people to make the right choices, but also to help them understand why some of these changes are being made, because we know in a lot of cases that some of them are valid, and in some cases we can help people explain better, you know, why the level of change that is being put forward sometimes is just unrealistic. So we've had some good results through doing that. But the other thing that we've been doing as well is, particularly in North Ayrshire, we've been doing quite a bit of work with them on helping support ILF applications. So although we can't actually apply for the new ILF fund directly, we've certainly been supporting with clients that we've worked with in the past, going back, looking at people we've worked with who might now be eligible for ILF funding, who potentially are in need of more support, but because of the change in eligibility criteria wouldn't be able to access it through the local authority. And we've been doing the work to prepare those applications, and then they're being submitted through the local authority. And I think that has also helped a lot in terms of building the relationships and you know, letting them see that we're not we are there to support them as well. So just in some of the other areas, I know it's a challenge for the local authorities with the ILF applications. So that's always another way in as well. And just to remember that although we can't submit them, we can certainly help with the preparation.
Thank you, Kay. Thanks for sharing those additional, really positive to hear about like that agility and that sort of just changing to respond to what's kind of needed. So we've got this new thing, well, not terribly new now, but certainly still new in the grand scheme of things, opportunity for some people to access ILF, and fantastic to hear about independent support organisations responding to that and being agile. So I'm wondering if we've sort of settled for questions just now. I'm sure there's, I mean, we could, as we said earlier, this is an hour, so it's not ever the chance to get through everything. We've been thinking about it as a bit of an introduction to some of the conversations and the beginning of relationships and learning across different local areas to bring to the national perspective. So we would emphasise if there's particular things that you think we've not got to today that you would be interested in digging a little deeper in, we could maybe arrange other seminars that would give us the opportunity to do that in a little bit more depth. But yeah, we're very much thinking about it as the beginning of a conversation. So no matter which of the groups of stakeholders you are from and represent today, please do let us know what other sort of circumstances, occasions you would like us to try and set up within the SDS seminar space, and we'll try to do that. Ashley's got her hand up, and then when we hear from Ashley, we've also got a question for Ashley. In you come.
Yeah, sorry, thanks, Laura. I just thought I'd come in there. So I work at Inspiring Scotland, who fund SURD, which funds the organisations Bex and Violet and Joanne and Kirsty and lots of other people here are funded through. But we've deliberately taken a back seat today because we wanted to hear from the projects and also their colleagues like Emma at Social Work about how things work locally. But just to let you know, I'll put my email in the chat. But we are here as fund managers if you've got any questions on SURD overall, or you're not sure what your local SURD organisation does, or you've got any feedback, feel free to get in touch with us. We saw today as just a really good opportunity to remind everyone that SURD funded organisations are, they're here to support people using social care and social workers. They're a resource, please use them. They've a shared goal with social work. They've got the same aim to help people live independently as well as they can for as long as they can. But like Bex was saying, they are anoraks. They're local experts in self-directed support, but also all the community assets that people can tap into. And what our learning has showed us that the earlier people can be referred into independent support, the better, because it does help them access community supports, helps them to get that, that support much quicker if they're waiting on an assessment. It can reduce the need for formal support potentially, and also people are going to assessments prepared. They've thought about what makes a good day for them. They understand the options. They've got a bit of an understanding of what the social worker is going to be speaking to them about. But they can also, the earlier they can support people, they can actually stop problems happening. Like somebody else was saying, if option one isn't actually right for that person, it was Kirsty, they know what's involved before they actually agree to it. But yeah, we would just encourage you to, refer to SURD organisations if you can work in partnership with them, identify the areas that they can add most value in your area. What are the gaps? Because we know that some local authorities do option one support in-house, so actually independent support time would be better spent doing something else, maybe the pre-assessment support. So, it can look different in different areas. But yeah, I'll put my email in the chat, but just give us a shout if you've got any questions or feedback or concerns. Thanks.
That's fab, Ashley. And there actually is a wee question there from Jerry from Fife. Does each local SURD funded organisation have the freedom to decide what the focus of their work will be, or are all the funded orgs working to the same agreed independent support outcomes?
They have got some structure and flexibility within that. So SURD has, and it's quite a broad structure, we think. There's overarching principles about, I could look them up. We've got fund outcomes that are all about making sure people are informed. They've got the knowledge and understanding about self-directed support. They feel prepared to have a social work assessment. They feel confident in making their social care arrangements. They feel they've had choice and control over the planning, and then they feel confident they've been supported to manage their social care package if it goes ahead, and particularly if they use option one. So that is our very broad framework for what we want the SURD organisations to achieve. How they then do that is up to them. They've got that flexibility, and we agreed that it's all the organisations have been funded. They're all in place now, so we did that as part of the assessment. We sort of agreed what they were doing, and that's why some organisations who might already have a pre-existing contract with the local authority to be the option 1 support provider, so that's covered. SURD comes in and will fund the pre-assessment side of things, because that's the gap that the organisation in question has found. Not enough people are getting information before assessments, so SURD can fill the gaps, because we appreciate there are some local authority arrangements already in place. But then other areas, because those arrangements are different, local authorities have different approaches to option 1 support. Some areas don't necessarily have a contracted option 1 support service, so that's why, which I think might be the case in Highlands and Argyll and Bute, which is probably why Bex gets a lot of those option 1 referrals from the local authority, because there isn't another organisation doing that. So it does vary within a broader structure.
Yeah. So there's a bit of structure for some consistency across the provision, but also enough freedom for that sort of local, responding to what local need is and what the local circumstances are. Fantastic. Thank you so much for your question, Jerry. Thanks for your response there, Ashley. And we're just going to take this opportunity to thank our speakers today for sharing of their experience and valuable knowledge so generously. Thanks also for your questions. Thank you very much for your time. Please bear in mind our offer to do another session. We look forward to seeing you again sometime very soon, either at another seminar or at another one of our spaces, or if we join you in your space. So yeah, just thanks again to the speakers and to yourselves for coming to join us in this valuable discussion today. All the best, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.